Hello and welcome to this edition of the Potomac Local Podcast. I am your host, Uriah Kaiser, publisher of Potomac Local News. Joining us on the podcast today is Rich Anderson. Rich is running to reclaim his seat in Virginia's 51st House District. Rich, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Good to be here.
So I've been covering you for a long time. You came onto the political scene in 2009, and you served in the House of Delegates through the 2017 session, where we saw a sort of a blue wave come in that year, and along with Governor Northam, was a new class of Democrats that were elected, and you are one of many Republicans this year who are looking to take back those House seats. Tell me, sir, how is that effort going?
Well, I think the effort is going very well. We're speaking to you from our campaign headquarters, which is in one of the most highest traffic areas in Prince William County, Dillingham Square. We've got several campaigns working out of here, high energy, a lot of time at the doors, a lot of contact with voters. So it is a very exhilarating campaign.
You are in Lake Ridge, and the 51st District spans the majority of Prince William County. So you get a cross-section of the heavily populated, more urban eastern side of the county, and then as you go out west around Manassas, you see some of the rural areas of the county too. You are known for your efforts in door knocking. As you get out into the neighborhoods, as you're talking to your potential voters, what are you hearing?
Well, what I'm hearing is a multitude of things, Uriah. First of all, I do encounter at the doors a discussion about this year's legislative session. And mind you, we are knocking across a broad cross-section of political philosophies, if you will, because I seek to represent all members of the 51st House District. So if I want to be successful, I better go talk to all people across the spectrum in Prince William County in the 51st District. So what I hear at the doors with a fair amount of frequency is what some have called chaos and embarrassment versus leadership and results enrichment. I do hear a number of terms about the Blackface Scandals, about allegations of sexual assault, about late-term abortion, things like that. But I don't want to talk about that stuff. What I want to do, and which I try to do, and pretty successfully, is I like to flip it to the kitchen table issues that I think are important to people here in Prince William County. And that's such things as caring for military veterans, the core services of government like transportation, education, public safety. And so I find that those sorts of issues, as they always have, resonate with the voters of the 51st.
So for those who weren't paying attention, those issues that you brought up that you say you don't want to talk about, first, Governor Northam was embroiled in a blackface scandal when a yearbook photo surfaced of him from his 1984 college yearbook. And the governor firstly admitted it to being could have been him, and he apologized and then retracted that statement, and which then prompted many calls for his resignation by members of his own party. Obviously, that did not happen. The governor is still the governor as of today. And you also talked about sexual abuse, and that, of course, is Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax was embroiled in a sex abuse scandal, and the Republicans call for a hearing on those allegations to allow the accusers to come forward, much like they did in the Brett Kavanaugh hearings on the U.S. Supreme Court. That hearing never took place, and this. Do you think that these events of earlier this year, do you think they will be polarizing on November 5th, Election Day? Or do you think enough time has passed that people have forgiven him, the governor, and forgotten about the lieutenant governor's allegations, and they've moved on?
Well, that's a hard question to answer, simply because the voters are unpredictable. And so it's hard to see how that plays out. The only thing that I can speak to is what I've heard at the doors, and it does get brought up to me fairly often. But again, as I said, I like to swing the discussion pretty quickly to other things, because those are not issues that, should I return to Richmond, I'm going to be acting on. I'm going to be acting on the core services of government, taking care of military veterans, and a whole range of other issues that affect the everyday lives of Virginians.
You have been when you were in Richmond, you were big on military issues, veterans issues, and I know that you have remained active in that cause. You were big in leading the effort to bring a VA medical center to Vint Hill, which is just across the Prince William County line in Fauquier County. Some of the legislation that you were successful in getting across the finish line in 2017 was legislation that allows U.S. servicemen and women who serve their country to pay less in tuition at Virginia community colleges and state schools. You have done a lot in the area of veterans awareness and advocacy. What more is there left to do?
Well, I'm a member of the Joint Leadership Council of Veteran Service Organizations. That is an umbrella organization, and it consists of 27, I believe, veterans organizations, all the way from the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars to Disabled American Veterans to the Association of the U.S. Army, and on and on. Some 24 organizations. We meet quarterly, and I represent MOA, the Military Officers Association of America, and together we are crafting veteran legislative priorities that will make its way into bills in the 2020 legislative session. So during this interregnum, when I am not in office and acting as a private citizen, I was asked to come onto that body and to help do some work to find meaningful legislation. And so we're working on that right now. We last met in July, and very soon we will go final on our recommendations. We're working right now on 10 legislative priorities, which we would like to see make it into bills to be carried in the 2020 session. So there's more to be done. Those actual 10 things, there still needs to be more work done, so it's somewhat proprietary in nature until all of the organizations buy into it. But I'm very pleased with the progress they're making. Should I be reelected, I will exit stage right from the Joint Leadership Council of Veteran Service Organizations and be prepared in Richmond to take the ball when they toss it to me. The Speaker and other members have indicated that I will again chair the General Assembly Military Veterans Caucus, so then I will play a role in trying to carry those bills across the line using others, and I like to do so in a bipartisan way because that's the best assurance of success.
Republicans are hanging on to a slim majority in Richmond, and obviously it's your effort in your effort to regain your House seat is to add to that majority. So what do Republicans need to do? What's the message that you and other Republicans who are running to reclaim seats in recent years that have been lost in Prince William County to Democrats? What do you think is be the message that resonates with voters?
Well, I think the message that resonates with voters is that over the last two legislative sessions, 2018 and 19, there's been a considerable amount of, let's say, undesirable behaviors in the General Assembly and undesirable outcomes. And I think that the right thing for conservative candidates to do is to carry the message that we want to focus not on national issues, not on national celebrities, not on national money, but instead to focus on those kitchen table issues that are important to voters. Again, like I said earlier, the core functions of Virginia state government: good, solid, sound, structurally sound budget, those sorts of things.
Your opponent, Delegate Hala Ayala, who replaced you in the House, has not been successful in carrying and winning, getting a lot of her own legislation passed. And so this has been noted amongst those who follow politics locally at the Chamber of Commerce. Is to be fair, is this something? And Delegate Carter, who I spoke with earlier today for an interview similar to this, has had 0 bills passed in 2 years. You served in the legislature for many years. Is this something that is common amongst freshman class delegates, or is it something else? Is it something that more indicative of not being able to either make the right partnerships, reach across the aisle to the slim Republican majority to do deals? What do you attribute this to this sort of inaction, this legislative inaction, or ability to get bills passed of this current class, and what you might do differently?
Well, I believe that the legislative process is the art of the possible. One who is going to sponsor or patron, as we say in the General Assembly, bills for consideration by the body has to look at the broader needs of Virginia. What do mainstream Virginians, everyday moms and dads and families, what will they support? And then to identify those issues and carry bills that address those things. I think that's very important. I think that the failure of some in the recent legislative session of the General Assembly to successfully move legislation through is not necessarily a partisan or a political outcome, because there were freshman Democrat delegates who had as much as 50% of their bills passed. And while I had a fairly good pass rate for my bills, I can guarantee you there were legislative sessions where I would have killed to have half of my bills pass. And so for anyone to make a claim from the other side of the aisle that those were partisan kills simply is without merit, in my opinion. We shall see. But just a review of the bills that were passed, I think that they were bills that just didn't have the broadest amount of support. Building coalitions is very important. There was typically, for me, I would identify bills to carry, for the most part, that I thought both parties could support. And then what I would typically do is find a Democrat co-patron in the House, perhaps find one in the Senate, and then move legislation through. And then you had a higher success rate in moving it through both chambers and to the governor's desk for signature. And so I learned that pretty quick. I didn't need an entire legislative session, my first session in 2010 and 2011, to figure that out. So it's the art of the possible.
Is it? Do you think that the current class of legislators are they proposing the right bills? Are they backing, for lack of a better term, are they backing the right horse? Are they looking at the issues that are facing district residents versus maybe thinking of the state as a whole? And how much of it is a state legislator's job to focus on the issues that may be impacting or affecting a district versus having a broader look and scope of thinking statewide? How much time do you spend doing both?
Hey, you're right. It's both. There are certain issues that a given legislator, regardless of their party or house of membership, that they need to carry specifically for their district because there is a specific need in their district. Those opportunities usually present themselves. But when one goes into the General Assembly, they also have a vast role, a significant role in affecting 8.2 million Virginians. And so some bills are focused on the needs of all Virginians. Other bills focused on the needs of a specific district. So it's actually both.
Prince William County's changed, right? And it continues to grow more democratic in the way it votes. I can attest to this, covering Prince William County for more than 10 years. In off-year elections, you could, like in 2017, it used to be Prince William County would go for the GOP. It would go red. In national elections, the county would swing to blue, and it was frequented by many national politicians. Barack Obama, John McCain, Mitt Romney came to the city of Manassas. Trump came in 2015 before he got into the 2016 campaign mode in earnest. But Prince William County no longer a bellwether county. Prince William County, I think, is solidly blue. So has that prompted a change in your campaign strategy from what it was when you started in 2009 and then one election in 2010, you served in 2011? What has changed between now and then?
Well, if you're asking about my own campaign, I have something I believe this year that I didn't have before, which by before I mean 2 years ago, and that is I have a superb campaign team. There's no two ways about it. Having spent 30 years in a military uniform, I know something about organization, and we have a superb organization this cycle, above and beyond what we had in the last cycle in 2017. Additionally, I think that with the changes in the makeup of the General Assembly or the House of Delegates in Richmond over the last 2 years, I think that there is a significant demonstration about the effectiveness of each of the two parties in passing meaningful legislation for residents, not only of the 51st House District, but all of the Commonwealth. So I believe that there are significant opportunities here. This is all about public service. It's not about celebrity. And we are placing a premium on our past record of service. I take a back seat to nobody about the bills that I've carried and the things that I've done on behalf of various communities in the Commonwealth. And looking ahead to the future, those are the same sorts of things that I want to do.
How much of it do you think also relies on what the national mood is? At the time, Trump in 2017, Trump was 1 year into office. His popularity was not very high, and it's fair to say that you only lost by 6 points, right? And I've seen larger spreads, right? So what does that mean for you? Does that mean you just have to knock on just a few more doors than you did last time? Does that mean you have to make just a few more appearances than you did last time to make up for that 6 point loss?
It's hard to say because it's not as simple as knocking on more doors. Although you referenced earlier about my reputation at the doors, I can say that we have eclipsed anything that I've ever done before. The other side is very energetic too. But, and while the other side may be able to outspend us because of advantages of incumbency and out-of-state money flowing into Virginia, out-of-state workers flowing into Virginia, out-of-state celebrities flowing into Virginia, I will not be outworked. And so I intend to do that. But I also intend to continue to bring this message about solid, stable, dependable, predictable government in the Commonwealth of Virginia, not the sorts of things that we saw unfold in 2018 and really in 2019 with the chaos and embarrassment that ruled the day.
When you were still in Richmond, you served on the state's high-speed rail committee that looked at linking North Carolina with Washington, D.C. and high-speed rail. Since that time, we've had some pretty big economic development announcements. The second largest economic development project ever in Virginia, Amazon, coming to Crystal City. The number one largest project, the Micron expansion in the city of Manassas, which is just outside your the 51st district, which would be your district should you win. These will bring a lot of people here to this region, and it will change the economy in ways that we've not seen before. You're a retired Air Force colonel. You served in uniform. You are part. Like many, retire from the military, have federal jobs or work for the federal government, which historically has been the economy, the driver of jobs in this region. But with Amazon, that's clearly changing, and will bring more people to the region. And I would imagine, as you're at the door, you are hearing things like, what are we going to do about traffic? This is something that you and I have talked about before in previous races, and I know that you have talked about expanding VRE. It's one of the things I wrote about way back in '09. One of the things that you were at debate with your opponent then, Paul Nichols, who supported Metro, as many Democrats do. Metro always seems to come up as a talking point in campaigns, and you sort of went the other way and talked about commuter rail, which already exists in Prince William County where Metro doesn't. So again, to the question, as you're at the doors and you're hearing from constituents who sit in traffic, whether they drive or they slug or they take the train, or what are you telling them? What can be done?
Well, I think probably the major quality of life issue that I hear about at the doors, of course, is transportation. And that is the issue that has vexed legislators for decades and will continue to vex legislators for decades to come. But there are a number of initiatives we can take. I have been concerned about the issue of Metro to Woodbridge in prior legislative sessions, prior election cycles. But I do believe that what we should do is we should take a good hard look at least planning ahead for possible opportunities. The challenge is that to bring Metro to Woodbridge and the increased traffic that will result from that, and you know this, is to address the transfer points north of us, which get the largest influx of trains and people changing trains to go on to further destinations. The principal one is the Roslyn Metro. For 8 years, I either drove and picked up slugs, rode as a slug, rode PRTC, and then later served for 8 years on the PRTC Board of Governors, Board of Commissioners, and then also rode Metro occasionally. So the Roslyn station is what I use right now. It would require a huge infrastructure change, which will probably take several decades. But I'm not a no on Metro to Woodbridge. I've rethought this to a degree. I think we've got to do some deep study and deep thinking and deep planning. So I'm willing to engage on that.
How, if you are reelected, how deep into the pockets are you willing to reach into Virginia's coffers to fund what Metro consistently says they need a more dedicated source of revenue? It is the only transit system of its kind in the nation without a dedicated funding source because it crosses 3 jurisdictions, Maryland, D.C., and Virginia. We in recent years, we've seen right before Governor McAuliffe left office, he diverted some funds from the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. That was an authority set up by House Bill 2313 back in 2013 to fund road projects in Northern Virginia. Some of that money was then diverted from NVTA to Metro, leaving the MBTA to make up a gap there. Funding. So and you were in that that session that the Republicans who voted to increase the gas tax in 2013 as part of HB 2013. That was the first time the gas tax had been increased since 1986. That created about $1 billion worth of funding for transportation across the state. Was that good enough? Do we need to wait another 20 or 30 years before we talk about transportation funding again? Or will you go to Richmond saying, nope, something needs to change? We still have people sitting in gridlock.
Well, yes, we still have people sitting in gridlock. There are some things that need to change. And so that's a deep conversation that we are just going to have. I think that we need to look at the gas tax. We need to look at some other things. There's a number of initiatives that I believe can take place. My concern with House Bill 2313 during the 2013 session of the General Assembly was that it was the end-all be-all. I remember one of the major arguments that I heard is this will take care of Virginia's transportation needs for the next decade. And then in 2014 or 15, I can't remember which session, there came the new incoming McAuliffe administration ready to reach for additional revenues in a much deeper way. And I can tell you, spending time at thousands and thousands of Prince William County doors and polling this, I know that people were against additional revenues. 2313, I thought, was a faulted bill. It didn't provide for transportation needs for a full decade, first of all. Secondly, it gathered an amalgam of a dozen different taxes from a dozen different, well, not a dozen, but many non-transportation related sources. Additionally, because it migrated so much during that General Assembly session. If you remember, the governor introduced a bill. It went through so many changes. It came out the far end of the pipeline, not looking anything like it did going in. And I knew that it would have some dysfunction that no one saw. You know what that dysfunction was? That dysfunction was no gas tax floor for Northern Virginia. And having sat on the PRTC Board of Commissioners for 8 years, when that happened, we spent a lot of time trying to figure a way out of that. And as a member of the House Appropriations Committee, I tried to get more money, and they weren't ready to talk about it in Richmond.
So that gas tax floor is when you take a look at what funds transportation in the region, it is a gas tax. It's a percentage of a tax charged at the pump, and fluctuating gas prices when they go high. In 2008, when we were paying $4 a gallon for gas, PRTC OmniRide, they were sort of rolling in the money, right? Because the money was flowing in, the gas prices were so high. When gas prices dropped down to where they are now, about $2.25 a gallon, the reverse happens. You have less gas tax money coming in, and so a floor would establish a baseline of funding that if prices were to go down, the state would still guarantee a certain amount of funding, tax funding, that would go to transportation projects or transportation services such as OmniRide, such as Metro, such as VRE, no matter how low the gas price dropped. Is that correct?
That's correct. Now you explained that very well, very well.
So this is one of the things that is just continually just popping on our radar, and we've been talking about this for about a year now. We've been reporting on it, and it goes back to the Amazon deal, which again is expected to bring an influx of people to the region onto our already crowded roads. There have been calls for the better part of 3 years from Prince William County legislators to change the proffer law, which a 2016 proffer law barred them, Prince William County officials, from working with developers, talking to developers, asking for things that they historically had received from developers. And we're talking about land for new schools, land for fire stations or police stations, or road improvements, widening of existing roads to make room for the influx of cars that these new developments would bring. And the developer would historically foot the bill for those things or donate the land for those things. The 2016 proffer legislation changed all that. It made it so if localities like Prince William County, which, to be fair, was one of the largest localities in the state to rely heavily on donations from developers, it made it so if they even asked for something like that, that would open them up for legal action. And so it really had really shut down all communication between the county government and the developers. And since then, very few, if no, new housing developments have been passed because the county will tell you, well, we cannot negotiate. Meanwhile, at a board meeting last week, Prince William Board of County Supervisors meeting, you had the Metropolitan Washington COG, Council of Governments, saying, look, we need more housing in this area, or we are already facing a housing crisis similar to that of San Francisco and Oakland, California. Is this on your radar? Is this something that you are wanting to go to Richmond and talk about?
About the proffer situation?
The housing, the potential housing crisis that COG says that our region is facing, to keep up with demand. What are we going to do about this inventory, which is really a housing inventory? We have a lack of housing inventory, and a UVA study says that by 2040, half of the state's population will live between Fredericksburg and Washington D.C. And I know I'm talking a lot here, but I know you're from Roanoke. I was born in Bluefield, so we know Southwest Virginia very well. So it's kind of disheartening to hear that so many people are leaving that part of the state. But it's also very important that we deal with the issue that they are coming to our now part of the state in Northern Virginia.
And so your question is, am I going to go to Richmond to try to address this issue of affordable housing?
Right, and moreover, the proffer law, right? We have calls on the Prince William County Board of Supervisors and other Northern Virginia jurisdictions to say, look, the 2016 proffer law change hurt us. It took away our ability to talk to developers, to some would say lean on developers for needed amenities like school sites and fire stations, things that they used to get all the time with residential developments they're no longer getting.
Okay. The 2016 proffer bill, I think, levied a number of unintended consequences on the developers. And it is stymied, as I understand it. This is a very localized issue, so I'm not going to profess to be an expert in it. But as I understand it, it stymies the capacity to have that back and forth dialogue between developers and between local elected officials on developments within the community. And so during this just completed session, I believe, when it Delegate Bob Thomas, I think, isn't he the one that carried a bill that did some partial repair to this? Well, that has been signed by the governor, so it's in effect now. I say between now and the forthcoming legislative session, perhaps we will have some view on whether it was successful or not, or whether it only partially addressed the concerns that I know the Prince William Board of County Supervisors has. What I will be doing is I will be, as I always have, consulting very closely, not only with the Prince William Board of County Supervisors, but with the Prince William County career staff, as well as the development community, to get a better view about if anything additional is needed 1 year after having this secondary bill passed.
That is, they're just. So last year there was a lot of talk about social issues, especially ERA. Delegate Hala Ayala led the charge. It was an unsuccessful charge to get the state General Assembly to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment that was originally introduced in 1972 and given until 1982 to receive a 3/5 ratification from the states to become law. That didn't happen, but in recent years, states are picking back up this bill and this proposed amendment and ratifying it. The delegate said that this will come back this session. If you go to Richmond in place of her, is this something that you will pick up the torch and carry on, that this effort to have ERA ratified?
Well, what I want to do is I didn't pay what I would call excessive attention to this whole discussion during the just completed legislative session. I mean, I wasn't glued to my computer watching everything that went on in Richmond. Quite frankly, I'm on a dozen different boards and commissions right here in Prince William County and a couple at the state level. So I'm pretty busy during my time out of office. And so I wasn't watching it that close. I can tell you this: I believe in equal rights for all people, regardless of any demographic. I have always, throughout a 30-year military career, worked for strong leaders who happen to be women. I am married to a strong woman. I have strong women in my family. And so when I go to Richmond, what I'm going to want to do is listen very closely to any arguments that are presented. I know on one hand, there is one side saying that congressional, or not congressional, but constitutional scholars that the issue has to be restarted by the United States Congress. Then I hear counting arguments from a constitutional perspective on the other side. I want to hear those arguments as an actual member in the General Assembly. But I reject any argument that Rich Anderson does not support equal rights for all.
You mentioned that you are married to a strong woman, and that strong woman is Ruth Anderson. She is the Occoquan District Supervisor on the Prince William Board of County Supervisors. You know, you are both running for re-election this year. And on a personal note, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what that's like when you have a husband and wife who are in the thick of an election race, but one is focused on local streetlight issues and one is focused. You have your head in statewide issues. How do you do that, and how do you find balance and time for family at the same time?
Well, boy, it's a struggle. But you see, we had a good training background there because collectively, Ruth and I were in the Air Force for 51 years, me for 30, she for 21. Both were senior officers and juggled the family requirements and the professional demands, sometimes leading large organizations consisting of thousands of people and billions of dollars in assets. And so we had a good training ground while wearing the cloth of the country. Now we have also adapted and are both able to do it. Now, obviously, for 8 years, I was in the General Assembly. For 2 of those 8 years, she was a supervisor. So we kind of juggled those balls then. And over the last 2 years, as I mentioned earlier, I'm as involved as a human can be involved in one's home community and Commonwealth. And so that continues, even though for the present, I no longer sit in the House of Delegates. Not every issue do we agree on. I will let Ruth tell you what those may be. But there are times, seriously, there are times when I came home from Richmond on the weekend where I was met by my wife at the door with a question: why did you vote for / or against House Bill XYZ? And so we don't always agree on every issue. I will wager you don't always agree with your spouse on every issue. And so that carries over into legislative life. But it's absolutely a privilege and a pleasure to be able to continue in public service with her. Whether it's an elected office for me or whether it is a private citizen being engaged in the community, that's just what we do. It's all about public service and nothing else. That's all I know. I don't know how to overhaul your engine on your car or replace the crown, so I will do public service.
Rich Anderson is the Republican candidate for the 51st House District seat in Prince William County. Rich, thanks for coming on and talking with us today.
All right, I appreciate it, Uriah. Have a great day.
That is the Potomac Local Podcast. This go round, we will see you next time.